Comes to relations and ensuring collaboration between these countries. The idea here is to ensure that people learn from each other, ideas are shared, and proposals and suggestions are taken back home. So we hope that after all of this, that all the outcomes and resolutions that the P20 summit comes to will be implemented and will be felt by the citizens of the G20 countries.
And so, as host, that is from the media briefing of the Speaker yesterday, is indicating that the South African Parliament seeks an outcome where G20 parliamentarians unanimously pledge to strengthen legislative and oversight mechanism, ensuring that national laws and budgets are systematically aligned with gender-responsive framework to advance women's empowerment, leadership, and youth participation, particularly in the critical areas of climate policy and economic development.
And of course, if you want to know what the P20 summit is, let's give you a little explanation here. It is formally the Parliamentary Speakers Summit of the G20, and it is the highest level of gathering of parliamentary leaders from G20 countries, plus invited guests, observer states, and international organizations. It is an annual meeting of speakers of parliament from the G20 countries, and it is hosted by the parliament of the country holding the G20 presidency, and in 2025 that is South Africa, and that is why we find ourselves in Kleinmond this week. Now, it brings together parliamentary leaders to debate and shape responses to global issues like economic growth, sustainable development, inclusion, digital transformation, and climate change. The purpose and role of this is to bridge between governments and people. It ensures that decisions of G20 heads of state are reinforced by legislative oversight, accountability, and democratic legitimacy. Now, policy influence, while the summit itself doesn't create binding laws, its outcomes, documents, declarations, or statements often guide parliaments in aligning domestic legislation with G20 countries.
And you can see that some of the members, we can see that the delegates are starting to take seats as they are preparing for the G20 summit that will be starting at any time from now on. But of course, Africa has some desired outcomes that are clear and transformative as it seeks definitive shift in how the world manages debt and disaster. And the current framework for debt treatment are said to have failed to deliver timely relief, disproportionately burdening Africa's economy. So the collective advocacy will be for urgent reforms to the G20 common framework, including automatic suspension of debt servicing during negotiations and expanding its scope to include vulnerable middle-income countries. And this is not merely an economic argument. It is a moral imperative to free up fiscal space for climate adaptation, social programs, and essential developments.
And of course, the key agendas for this P20 Speakers Summit that is held in South Africa for 2025 is economic reforms for fair and inclusive growth, gender equality and women's empowerment, youth inclusion in governance and innovation, climate change and just energy transition, and of course, strengthening democracy and multilateralism.
And some of the desired outcomes that Africa demands to be an active player in the green energy revolution, not a passive beneficiary. And while the continent possesses vast renewable potential, it receives a paltry share of global energy investment. And as you can see there on your screen, delegates settling down, preparing for the start of the meeting, which we're expecting to start at any given time. As you can see there, that members are settling down, preparing for the start of this 11th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Forum.
And again, just a reminder of what it is. The focus here is to discuss and coordinate on global economic issues like trade, finance, development, climate change, digital transformation, and geopolitical stability. Now, the Parliamentary Speakers Summit of the G20 is the parliamentary track of G20. And of course, that is the Honorable Cedric Frolick, probably asking delegates to settle down as the program is about to commence at BENGUELA COVE right here in Kleinmond.
And part of those delegations are the speakers of parliaments from all G20 countries, speakers of South Africa's 9 provincial legislatures, presidents and representatives of the African Union and European Union, as well as other invited parliamentary leaders and observers.
Now let's take you over to BENGUELA COVE. As you can see, action there throughout the day. Thanks.
There's also a lot of our guests and delegates still standing at the back. It also applies to you. Take up your seating. May I request the ushers now to clear the area in front, as well as the aisle, so that the dignitaries can make their way into the venue. Honorable members, delegates and support staff, take up your allocated seats. May I ask for the area here in front of me to be cleared, please? May I request the delegates standing in front of me and support staff, will you please take up your allocated seats? Thank you. And for those who are standing, there's still a lot of space towards the second half of the venue. You may also take up those seats. There's more than enough seating available. Will the ushers also assist to get the delegates who are still outside the venue to move inside so that we do not delay proceedings any further?
All right, as you can see there on your screen, proceedings are set to start at any time, and expect that the proceedings will start with the singing of the national anthem, which will then be welcomed. We'll get a welcoming from the host town. The executive mayor of the Overstrand District Municipality, Mr. A. Class, will do the welcoming of delegates, which will be followed by the opening remarks by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Toko Didiza. And we take you back to BENGUELA.
The second row is leaders of delegation, and the third row is for ambassadors and other diplomatic heads that are accompanying the delegation. Mr. Sitole, may I ask for the center for the guests who are still standing around in the center to take up their seats, please.
As you can see, the proceedings are set to begin. Delegates are being told to take their allocated seats as we await the program to begin. And that is at BENGUELA COVE in Kleinmond. Of course, there is a set program that has been distributed, and you can get that program on our website at p20.parliament.gov.za to sort of just get an idea of what is set to happen throughout the day. This is the beginning of the summit. This is the much-awaited summit that is of a first in South Africa and on the African continent.
And indeed, we expect that the joint outcome documents will be read just after the speaker has delivered her opening remarks. So we can also expect on the program to hear from the joint declaration of the second P20 Women Parliamentarians meeting and the joint declaration of the P20 Young Parliamentarians meeting that took place in the past 2 days.
And of course, it was the first time that there was a meeting of young parliamentarians since the summit has been established, and that is one of the distinct differences that when it comes to how different things have come to this point when it comes to the hosting of the P20 with South Africa.
And indeed, with the P20 meeting of women parliamentarians, it was a second meeting. We know that the first one took place during the Women's Month here in South Africa on 13 and 14 August of this 2025. On the program, we can expect to also get the remarks by the Pan-African Parliament, the President, Honorable Chief Fortune Zakaria Charumba, was set to address the meeting at 09:40. As you can see there on your screen, things are about to go down at any given moment now. And I think they are still waiting for some of the delegates to settle down.
And of course, in 2024, the P20 happened in Brazil last year, and this year it is in South Africa. Now, of course, you've been seeing all those flags on the stage, and those are the 20 countries that make up the G20, and these are Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan. Let's go back to BENGUELA as those proceedings set to begin.
All right, just to take you to some of the key topics that will be discussed during the summit. There's 4 of those topics that you can expect to hear the members talking from them. The one is strengthening disaster resilience and responses, ensuring the readiness, inclusivity, and international cooperation in disaster risk reduction, and the second one being ensuring debt sustainability for low-income countries, advocating for transparency, accountability, and debt relief mechanisms that protect vulnerable economics. But we're taking you back to BENGUELA.
Speaker of the National Assembly and the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces to commence proceedings.
Thank you very much. I didn't expect that round of applause. Most welcome. Thank you. We are just waiting for a few other people to be seated, and then we will commence.
And of course, just a reminder that a group of 20, G20, of course, brings together the world's largest advanced and emerging economies. As of 2023, the African Union was made a permanent member. So now there are 21 members in total, and that is the 20 countries plus the European Union plus the African Union. Now, the list of 20 countries includes Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, South Korea, Turkey, the United Kingdom, the United States, and the European Union. And as I said earlier, since 2023, the African Union is now part of the G20 countries, and the African Union represents all 55 African states collectively. Now, together, these members represent about 85% of the global GDP and 2/3 of the world's population. Of course, these are all the countries that I mentioned, and those are the flags that are on stage. Now, we are watching the P20 Speakers Summit, and the program is about to commence. Delegates have been asked to take their allocated seats as we await the much-anticipated P20 Speakers Summit, the first on African soil and the first, of course, in South Africa. And we are coming to you live from BENGUELA COVE in Kleinmond in the Western Cape. And that on stage is the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP. Now, as we wait for the much-anticipated program to begin, these are some of the delegates that were taking part in the two meetings on the 29th and the 30th of September. And these meetings preceded this main event. And those meetings were the meeting of the women parliamentarians and the P20 meeting of young parliamentarians. Now, some of the issues that were highlighted there and shared are issues such as inclusivity, representation, and of course ensuring that young people and women are represented throughout, not just in the legislatures, but throughout business sectors. We're talking farming, we're talking IT as well, especially with technology and AI development. Now, of course, the key agendas that will be spoken to in this summit include economic reforms for fair and inclusive growth, gender equality and women's empowerment, youth inclusion in governance and innovation, climate change and just energy transition, as well as strengthening democracy and multilateralism. Now, why it matters that the P20 has been held in South Africa this year is that it is the only African member of the G20, and therefore it's ensuring that African priorities are brought to the fore. Now, of course, positions of Parliament in terms of the NCOP and NA as the leader and the host of the P20, this will ensure parliamentary diplomacy throughout the G20 countries. And this also provides a platform for issues like inequality, development, finance, and climate justice to be addressed with urgency. Of course, with all the discussions that we've been having throughout the past 2 days on Parliament TV, there are certain expectations from all the delegates with regard to the outcomes and the resolutions that will be taken from these meetings. There are non-negotiables as well that we've spoken to, and these are issues that have been ironed out in the two meetings that preceded this main event, which is the P20, the 11th G20 Speakers Summit that is held in South Africa. Now, the purpose and the role of this is to ensure that the decisions of the G20 heads of state are reinforced by legislative oversight, accountability, and democratic legitimacy. And while the summit itself doesn't create binding laws, its outcomes documents, and these are the declarations or statements, often guide parliaments in aligning domestic legislation with G20 commitments. Now, it amplifies voices of groups often underrepresented in executive-led G20 processes, such as women, youth, and civil society. Hence the side conferences on women parliamentarians and young parliamentarians that took place over the past 2 days on the 29th and the 30th of September here in Kleinmond at Arabella Hotel. Now, just a reminder that the P20 Summit is an annual meeting of speakers of parliament from G20 nations, and it is hosted by the parliament of the country holding the G20 presidency, and in this regard, in 2025, that is the Republic of South Africa. It brings together parliamentary leaders to debate and shape responses to global issues like economic growth, sustainable development, inclusion, digital transformation, and climate change. Now, of course, the P20 Summit was formerly the Parliamentary Speakers Summit of the G20, and it is the highest level of gathering of parliamentary leaders from G20 countries, plus invited guests, observer states, and international organizations. Now, like we've mentioned, in the past 2 days, we had the meeting of women parliamentarians and a meeting of young parliamentarians. And of course, the conference is kicked off with strong framing around solidarity, equality, and sustainability, tapping into South Africa's G20 presidency and the P20 Speakers Summit. Now, the young and women parliamentarians have been emphasizing that while representation has improved, many systematic hurdles remain, especially in relation to inclusion, especially in decision-making, climate justice, policy reforms, and institutional participation. Now, when we focus on the women parliamentarian session, some of the highlights include the focus on women's leadership in climate and energy justice, noting how climate change, energy transitions, extreme weather, and disappropriately affects women. Now, those are the visuals from BENGUELA COVE, where the P20 Summit is set to begin.
Thank you very much.
Things are set to happen. Let's go to BENGUELA.
Our honored guests were kind enough to give me a round of applause also when I walked onto the stage. So. I'll request that you remain standing while a choir will render the national anthem of the Republic of South Africa, and the national anthem will be rendered by students from local schools around this area. So I will now hand over to the choir to render the national anthem. Thank you very much to the choir for that wonderful rendition of our national anthem. And honored guests, could I ask you to take your seats? I'll now introduce you to my co-program director, the Honorable Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of South Africa, the Honorable Dr. Lotriet.
Thank you, Honorable Governor. Good morning to everyone. It is wonderful to receive you here this morning, and I might just add, in the Cape of Storms, so you can experience a bit of our natural heritage here and the weather, from beautiful yesterday to today's bit of wind. But it is my honor to now introduce to you the Executive Mayor, Mr. Archie Klaas. He is the Executive Mayor of the Overstrand District Municipality, and that is the district municipality in which this beautiful area falls. So it is my honor to introduce the Honorable Executive Mayor, Archie Klaas.
Thank you, Program Director. I'm a bit tall. Ladies and gentlemen, Program Director, indeed I would have been a little bit more humbled if I was the Executive Mayor of the Overberg District. But the Executive Mayor, Alderman Saki Franken, who is the Mayor of the district, is here. But between myself and him, he says that let me do the welcoming into the Overstrand local municipality. What a moment in time it is to be alive in this global world, for South Africa to be granted an opportunity to put its best foot forward. A moment for Western Cape to say hello to so many delegates. A moment for the esteemed delegates to go over our beautiful mountains, the mountains within the Over the Berg, which is the Overberg district, in which our Executive Mayor, Saki Franken, has joined us and is part of us. Welcome to the Overstrand municipal area. For a few days, you are literally between the mountain and the sea. With that, we are granted wind for free, and quite a number of other weather surprises. Census 2011 calculated the population here to be at 432 people. Census 2022 rendered the population as 132,495, which is a growth of 65% in population growth. That massive population growth presents both opportunities and challenges. And that is why I was super excited to see the choir that rendered the national anthem to welcome us, whom most of us come from the area where we are, a number of them from the oldest township in the Overberg, which is Realisation, and some of them from a school further down in Gansbaai. This represents who we are and what we seek to achieve. Honorable delegates, you are a few minutes away from Kleinmond and Betty's Bay towards that direction, where it is the home of the Stony Point Natural Reserve, a home to a unique colony of African penguins, the third largest breeding colony of African penguins in the world. A kilometer this way, if you put your eyes that direction, you will see Fisher Haven and Houston, which remain a fisherman's village, where the majority of people on that side still survive simply by the ocean and what the ocean provides. That is an area we've zoned for future development and massive economic growth for the area. Program Director, we are the home of the official South African national flower, which is the protea. Our community is as colorful as the protea is, as endurance, as strong as our national symbol is. A few kilometers further down that way is Stanford, a small village known for winning back-to-back the Golden Award of Chelsea Flower Festival. A wonderful investment destination we are. We are rebuilding our ocean economy. Who would know about the diving with the shark experience further down in Gansbaai? Program Director, we are repurposing our harbors. We hope that many of you will honor us by going into the whale watching boat so that you can experience what we showcase. Sounds like an ordinary experience, but to many who knows that seeing a whale very close to you is not a normal experience at all. But with us here, I am told that 2 days from now, you will be going and enjoying our shores. We've got about a 12-kilometer walk on the cliff path where you can watch the whales as you move, as you enjoy the sea, so that you experience what we are about. But in conclusion, to many of you who are here, I am sure that you are amazed at how we are squeezed in between the mountain and the sea. It is an amazing investment opportunity. We really hope that you will take the time to wander around, enjoy the scenery. But most importantly, we are one of the best spots in the world to invest. Don't be shy to invest. This is the busiest possible time for the area. We've got the Whale Festival season that is taking place this weekend. There are festivities, everything else. So I am hoping, National Speaker, that you will take the time to extend your stay. Stay over for the weekend. Enjoy our scenery. Thank you so much. The wind is ordered just for you to remember that we are between the sea and the mountain. Thank you so much.
I don't know whether the mayor is aware that we're going to bill him for this advertising that he did here now. But thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for that wonderful input and giving us a sense of what this Overberg district is all about and the opportunities. Because keeping in mind that the P20 as well as the G20 is all about bringing nations together from the G20 countries to showcase South Africa, to showcase the African continent, and at the same time to encourage you to invest in our country, to invest in Africa, and to show you just what we have to offer. And we want to thank the Honourable Mayor for his input. The Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of South Africa, the Honourable Toko Didiza, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the Honourable Msweni Ntsapane, the Deputy Speaker, Honourable Dr. Lotriet, the President of the Pan-African Parliament, the Vice President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, the Executive Mayor of the Overstrand District, heads of delegations from the G20 countries, the African Union and the European Union, Your Excellencies, the Ambassadors, High Commissioners and Consul Generals, Honourable Speakers and members of the G20 countries, all presiding officers of Parliament and the NCOP, ladies, gentle ladies and good men. We welcome you here this morning, and as the Mayor said, be assured that the wind that you are experiencing should not be of concern to you, because it is those winds that are out there that have blown you from all over the world into this auditorium today. So you are safe in this environment, and we welcome you with a warm South African welcome, and we hope that you will continue to enjoy your stay and extend your stay for a few more days and enjoy the hospitality of this region and of South Africa. Having said that, honourable delegates, allow me now to introduce to you the Speaker of the National Assembly of South Africa, the Honourable Toko Didiza, who will now address us. Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much, our Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces and our Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, who are driving this program this morning. I would like to acknowledge the speakers and heads of delegations and deputy speakers from all the G20 countries. I'd also want to welcome the parliamentarians who form part of that delegation, particularly women and the young people who have been at work for the past 2 days. I also want to welcome the speakers of the SADC Parliamentary Forum who are here. I've seen the Dean of our Parliamentary Forum, Honourable Ndenda, who is here among us. I would like to recognize the House Chairperson of the National Assembly of South Africa and the National Council of Provinces. I would like to welcome the Portfolio and Select Committee Chairpersons of South African National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces who are here among us, as well as the Steering Committee of the Women Caucus. I would like to welcome the Vice President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union and also the President of the Pan-African Parliament and the representative of the European Union and all other distinguished guests who are here with us. But most importantly, I would like to acknowledge the National Council of Provinces Chairperson, Honourable Msweni, who's among us, and the representative of our President, Minister of Justice, Minister Kupai. It is with great honor and appreciation that I welcome you to Cape Town for the 11th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit. This occasion marks a historic milestone, as it is the first time the G20 is convened on the African continent. We are proud to host this distinguished gathering of parliamentary leaders from across the globe. Cape Town, with its breathtaking landscape, stands as a symbol of resilience and transformation. It was here in 1990 that President Nelson Mandela walked free from Robben Island prison. It was here that many of our people, who are the indigenous peoples of South Africa, fought against dispossession and emasculation of its people, the Khoi and the San. It is here when Jan van Riebeeck landed in the Cape in 1652 and actually acclaimed that this is the Cape of Storms. As you can see today, we're experiencing a bit of what I'm sure those voyagers of the time experienced. But it's also here where we saw the resilience of the struggles of our people fighting for their liberation. Your presence here affirms the value of parliamentary diplomacy, which is a vital tool for building bridges across borders as well as peoples. Legislatures are not only the guardians of democracy, but also architects of inclusive development. The theme of this year's summit is harnessing parliamentary diplomacy for the realization of global solidarity, equality, and sustainability. It speaks to the urgent need for collaborative leadership in addressing the challenges facing humanity. We meet at a time when the global landscape is being reshaped by intersecting crises and opportunities. The world continues to grapple with aftershocks from the COVID-19 pandemic, the rising geopolitical tensions that we've experienced in our different regions, armed conflicts, and the accelerating pace of climate change and technological advancement. The G20, under South Africa's presidency, has responded with transformative initiatives aimed at shaping a more equitable and sustainable future. Among us here, honorable delegates, we have 9 speakers from our 9 provincial legislatures. Some of you can share with you that in their provinces and their regions, climate change is no more an issue for the discussions in the boardrooms, but they have actually experienced it and witnessed it in real time. Let me highlight some of the key outcomes and achievements of G20 Johannesburg Summit-related activities. The debt sustainability. The G20 financial ministers affirmed commitment to common framework for the debt treatment to support low-income countries facing debt distress. South Africa, together with like-minded nations, has championed reforms to the global debt architecture, advocating for tailored solutions that address the burden of excessive indebtedness and promote long-term fiscal sustainability. With the African Union now a permanent member of the G20, South Africa's presidency has elevated the African agenda and positioned South Africa's cooperation as cornerstone of inclusive multilateralism. These achievements and many others not mentioned reflect the G20's evolving role, not just a forum for economic coordination, but as a platform for global solidarity and sustainable development. As parliamentarians, we are entrusted with the responsibility of representing the voices of our peoples. Through legislative action, oversight, and budgetary allocation, we have the power to ensure that the outcomes of this summit lead to tangible progress in our societies. We are the bridge between the global aspirations and the citizens we represent. South Africa's hosting of the summit reflects our dedication to advancing African perspectives within a global discussion. The African Union's Agenda 2063 envisions a continent that is integrated, prosperous, and peaceful. The inclusion of African voices in the G20 processes is essential to building a united and inclusive international order. I just want to share with delegates seated here that prior to this summit, we have had consultations, 2 symposiums with the Pan-African Parliament to ensure that the voices of the parliamentarians of the continent, whose organization, the African Union, is a member, have an opportunity to input to this process. We also had a dialogue within the Southern African Development Community Parliamentary Forum, SADC, where also, at a regional perspective, was added to the debate and the dialogue. We also, in the past 2 days, have had the meetings of young men and women, as well as the Women's Conference, to look at how, from their perspectives, can actually input into this dialogue, and hoping that the outcomes will be reflected by the leaders in their and form part of the final declaration that will be sent to the Leaders' Summit. The summit of the P20 will focus on several areas, such as strengthening disaster resilience and response. Some of you will appreciate that in the past year, we have had a number of disasters globally, which countries alone may not be able to cope with, but requires solidarity from others. Mobilizing finance for a just energy transition. As we all know that one of the commitments of climate change is how, as countries, we can move away from fossil fuels. However, one of the things that we do realize is the incapacity of some of the countries to be able to move with speed that they would desire because of the challenges of financial resources. And it is through these commitments that countries have made that, in our view, it is important for us globally to see how best we can mobilize such resources for a just energy transition, not only for one country or those countries that need finance, but for all of us. Because when disaster strikes, it does not strike only to those countries that may seem to be affected, but it affects a majority of us. It is also our view that this summit must reflect on ensuring that debt sustainability for low-income countries is achieved. We also want to harness critical minerals for inclusive growth and sustainable development, not only to see them as extractive industries where we extract what we want and leave communities in distress, but how we can make countries to utilize those resources for their sustainable development. It is our view that this summit of the P20, the voice of our peoples, must ensure that we empower youth and women by the decisions that we take. These are areas which we believe are relevant for the aspirations of the African continent, but also for all the member states of the G20. They reflect the interconnectedness of our challenges and the need for shared solutions that are responsive to our diverse national context and differentiated realities. I wish to extend special congratulations to the women parliamentarians and young parliamentarians who have successfully concluded their respective meetings ahead of this summit. The joint declarations emerging from these meetings provide parliaments with a valuable blueprint for advancing the women and youth agenda in our countries. We commend the commitment and dedication demonstrated by these parliamentarians in crafting forward-looking recommendations that will guide our legislative frameworks. Their contributions enriches the summit and strengthen our resolve to ensure that no voice and no one is left unheard in shaping the future that we envision. We are confident that the discussions held here today will be constructive, insightful, and forward-looking. We encourage all delegates to engage fully, to share their experiences and perspectives, and to work together in pursuit of our shared goals. Let Cape Town be remembered not only as the host city of the 11th G20 Parliamentary Summit, but as a place where a renewed commitment to parliamentary cooperation and sustainable development was strengthened. Once again, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you. We are honored by your presence and looking forward to the meaningful contribution you will make during this summit. Siyanamungela eMzansi Africa. Most welcome to South Africa in the Western Cape. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I do believe that our delegates and guests feel most welcome now in our country. The Honourable Speaker also referred to the importance of the past 2 days that we've had with sessions on women parliamentarians and young parliamentarians. And could I ask the Honourable Mananiso to come forward, and the Honourable Kumbaka. The Honourable Mananiso is a member of the National Council of Provinces, as well as a chairperson of a portfolio committee or a select committee, and she will give us a brief overview of the Women Parliamentarians session.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, and let me stand on the protocol established by our Executive Speaker of the National Assembly and say all protocol observed. I must say, in terms of Women Parliament, we were the theatre of ideas, and we hope that all what we the 6 priorities out of 42 provisions will be actioned, because we are tired of speaking and crafting policies, legislation and regulations that are not implemented. Let me begin by commending the women parliamentarians for succeeding, concluding their meeting and adopting their declaration. The joint declaration establishes clear objectives to advance women's empowerment and their full, equal and meaningful participation in sustainable development. Aligned with the 2030 agenda, it outlines objectives across 7 strategic priorities, areas drawn from the 42 provisions. Firstly, in terms of our commitment, we said that we should create an enabling environment for women's rights by aligning national legislation with international human rights standards, particularly CEDAW, eliminating discrimination against women and achieving gender parity at all decision-making levels. Honourable members, we secondly said we must make governance and budgeting gender responsive through integrating gender-responsive budgeting frameworks into national budgets, strengthening parliamentarians' oversight mechanism, developing evidence-based policies for women's health, education and economic opportunities. We further said, and ensuring women-led development in key governance agendas. Thirdly, we said that we must establish care as a pillar of sustainable development by promoting comprehensive key policies for care policies that recognize risk distribution and value unpaid care and domestic work performed by women and girls. Fourthly, we said ensuring women's leadership in crisis management by institutionalizing women participation in climate change adaptation and disaster risk management. We further said combating gender-based violence during disasters and armed conflict fully implemented by UN Security Council Resolution 1325 and guaranteeing access to comprehensive sexual and reproductive health care services. Fifthly, we said making energy transition financing gender inclusive by ensuring women's participation in energy sector decision-making, eliminating bureaucratic barriers for women-owned energy businesses, and developing specialized financial and instruments for women in entrepreneurship. I must say, in terms of these issues, we are very clear that they're just energy transition. If it doesn't have women involved, it is not our plan, it is not our priority. We then said empowering women economically through agricultural development by guaranteeing women's equal land ownership and inheritance rights, establishing gender-responsive financial services, including collateral-free loans, expanding digital banking infrastructure in rural areas, and promoting indigenous women's economic empowerment while valuing their traditional knowledge. In this, we said that those who are excluded, marginalized, vulnerable, they must be part of us. We don't want to leave anyone behind. Lastly, we said in terms of our 7th priority, accelerating women's climate leadership by calling on the G20 to implement ambitious gender-responsive climate policies with clear timelines. We have agreed as women that we are tired that every time when we do our monitoring and evaluation, there are no town-bound gender-responsive issues. But in this G20, taking a commitment that our issues will be time-bound. And we said that accountability mechanism promoting just transition with decent employment opportunity in clean energy sectors and establishing transparent mechanism for tracking climate finance to women-led agricultural initiative. These objectives represent a comprehensive commitment to the legislative action, resource allocation, and accountability that will transform the lives of women and girls globally, persons with disability, LGBTQI societies. I call upon all G20 members, Parliament, to implement this objective with agency and determination. The time for act is now. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Mananiso. It is indeed the time to act. I am now inviting the Honourable Kumbaka, one of our young parliamentarians. She is a member of the National Assembly.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, Honourable Speakers, Honourable Minister, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. We young parliamentarians from G20 member countries and partner nations convened in Kleinmond, South Africa on the 29th and 30th of September for the inaugural P20 meeting of young parliamentarians held under the auspices of the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa as part of the 11th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit. We met under the theme Young Parliamentarians as Drivers of Global Solidarity, Equality and Sustainability. Our gathering provided a platform to share experiences, to advance parliamentary diplomacy, and to bring the voices, perspectives, and aspirations of young people into the center of the G20 parliamentary speakers process. We affirm our belief that inclusive governance, youth-led innovation, and multilateral cooperation are indispensable for shaping a fairer, more peaceful, and sustainable world. We note with deep concern that young people remain underrepresented in decision-making, with only 2.8% of MPs worldwide under the age of 30. That also youth unemployment remains unacceptably high, averaging 13% globally and significantly higher in developing economies. We also note with deep concern that 2.2 billion young people still lack internet access, limiting their opportunities for education, work, and participation, and that our generation faces intersecting crises from climate change and mental health fragility to displacement, inequality, and the rising cost of living. In response, we commit ourselves to the following shared priorities. In global solidarity, we will harness parliamentary diplomacy to promote inclusive multilateralism and deepen cooperation among young legislatures in addressing global challenges. In equality and sustainable development, we work to eliminate all forms of discrimination and inequality and to guarantee equal access to education, quality education, and healthcare, decent work, energy, digital connectivity, and political representation. We further commit to supporting rural youth and ensuring generational renewal in agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. In climate action, we call upon parliaments to enact legislation aligned with national adaptation plans and nationally determined contribution to strengthen oversight of climate commitments. We affirm that those most vulnerable to climate change must be placed in the center of our legislative action. In youth-orientated institutional reforms, we will build enabling environments for young parliamentarians, ensuring gender transformative and intersectional approaches. We commit to mainstreaming youth perspective in all policy processes and call upon the P20 Speakers Summit to establish a permanent P20 meeting of young parliamentarians within the G20 framework, ensuring that young youth perspectives consistently shape global legislative priorities. We leave this gathering united in our dedication to parliamentary diplomacy and in our determination to foster a world that is fair, inclusive, and sustainable. We pledge to remain proactive agents of change, building bridges across nations and generations. This declaration, adopted by consensus, will be formally submitted to the 11th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit for consideration. It reflects the resolve of young leaders to strengthen global solidarity, promote equality, and advance sustainability in partnership with our senior counterparts. And so we conclude with a call to action. Let this moment not be symbolic but historic. Let it be the beginning of a permanent partnership between generations, one that combines the energy of youth with the wisdom of experience to build a future of justice, peace, and sustainability for all. We do not seek to replace the leaders of today. We seek to stand beside you with courage and conviction. We pledge to be partners in building a future where solidarity is stronger than division, where equality replaces exclusion, and where sustainability defines progress. Let us move together as one and make sure that we secure the future and the present. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mananiso and Honorable Kumbaka, for your inputs, and I'm sure that your comments were well received. Honorable delegates, I must say that, whenever I went into those conference venues where these meetings were taking place, and I was really impressed with the high level of inputs that were made by the various delegates that made presentations. The inputs were frank, open, and there was an environment of calm and peaceful interaction. Even though delegates sometimes didn't agree with each other in terms of what they were saying, but the manner in which it was received was something that gives us hope for the future, because people were able to express themselves in an open manner, and they were able to understand and appreciate what the opposing views were saying. And for this, we must be very thankful to all of the delegates that made their presentations in such a passionate manner. And we want to thank them for that. And of course, we know that as we move forward, we will move forward with a sense of hope and optimism that the future bodes well for all of us. At this point, honorable delegates, I have the pleasure of introducing to you the President of the Pan-African Parliament, the Honorable Chief Fortune Zakaria Churambira, who will now address us. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you, the Director of Proceedings. May I start by recognizing and acknowledging the President of this country, South Africa, His Excellency, and the incoming the chairperson of the G20, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, represented in this room. The Speaker of the National Assembly of South Africa, Honorable Angela Toko-Didiza, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces of South Africa, Honorable Refiwe Tsipane, the Vice President of the Interparliamentary Union, Honorable G. Morawska Staneka, our esteemed speakers, heads of legislatures across the world, both at national and regional levels. Esteemed invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, indeed I stand here representing the Continental Parliament of this continent, Africa, which is called the Pan-African Parliament. It's an organ of the African Union. It is the voice of the people, citizens of this continent. May I, first of all, congratulate Africa and South Africa for chairing the G20 summit in November 2025. And this meeting, or this gathering, is an opportunity for us as parliamentarians, as parliaments of the world, to get organized and make an input to the November summit. We are aware that when the G20 was established in 1999, the focus was on the executive governments only. The parliamentary dimension was missing for 11 years, until in Canada there were some informal discussions to bring in the parliamentary side, so that the G20 is not only a forum of the executive, but that it should be also a platform for the representative side, legislative side, or parliamentary side also to make an input. And considering that we are meeting in Africa for the first time as G20, I think a number of issues should be brought to the fore. One is, why should parliaments be brought in? I can refer to the statements made by heads of state on this continent, Africa, when they decided to establish the Continental Parliament. The Organization of African Union had operated for 41 years as a global forum. For 41 years, there was no parliament. But then they agreed among themselves, as executive, as heads of state, without parliament, among themselves, they realized and pronounced themselves clearly that, then it was called OAU, not yet AU, that an OAU without a parliament becomes an AU of governments only and not of citizens. So they decided to then establish the Pan-African Parliament in 2004. I believe the European Union and other continents went through a similar trajectory. I'm saying that because I want to underline the importance of this gathering, that we should stand up and be counted as parliaments. There should be clear results that people should say, before we had parliament as one of the dimensions to G20, it was not as productive as when we brought in parliament. Otherwise, I'm saying, let's prove our value and relevance as parliaments, as parliamentarians, as speakers, as institutions of the voice of the people, and that we are a critical component of governance. When we are missing in governance, it means a very critical dimension is missing. Now, we gather here to ensure that we reinforce a representative and participatory democracy. What does that mean? People tend to understand democracy, which produces parliamentarians and governments. They tend to understand democracy as voting. And once you vote, you put leadership, democracy has been delivered. Yet that's not correct. Democracy is simply a means to ensure that there will be accountability by leadership. So we are institutions here of accountability, accounting to the people. And our voice into the G20 summit should show a dimension that having parliaments, having speakers as participants in the G20, the real issues, the real aspirations, practical issues are brought to the table. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm told 2 minutes, but I'll finish in 2 minutes. It shows that we are a critical component. And I'm saying, let's ensure that we have brought into G20 the issues that are confronting us. Some are global, of which it's easier for us to agree. Climate change, for example. What are we saying? What are we saying is parliaments of the world on the issue of climate change. There could be in politics differences in understanding and approaches, but we as parliament should agree on climate change. What exactly should we do, including benefits that are accruing from carbon markets? The dividends of carbon markets, are they going to the right people? What legislations, what policies should we have, should we put in place? The whole issue of the global system. We are coming from different continents. Global system is in a crisis. Multilateralism, bipolar, multipolar issues. What should we be doing? What are people saying? We are saying, are we sure that when we gather at G20, we are carrying the voices of the youth, for example? And I'm happy that the youth met, the women have met, and I'm happy that Pan-African Parliament, by November, we will have a model law for the continent of Africa on gender equality and equity. And that we need to ensure as parliaments the whole issue of global crisis, the issue of parliamentary diplomacy, that we come together as parliaments across the world and ensure that we have an approach that unifies and not divides the world. The issue of artificial intelligence, which is now the in thing. Are we sure that we are all moving together and that the whole issue of digital divide is eradicated? No. Now, finally, we are here to ensure inclusive development. Inclusive development. Inclusive within a community at national, regional, and even globally inclusive development. And fair trade. And remove unnecessary imbalances in trade on this continent. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Charumbira. My apologies, but there are times when you have to use your powers as a Deputy Speaker. Honourable delegates, we are trying to stay a bit ahead of the wind, so it is my honour and privilege to now introduce the Vice President of the Interparliamentary Union, Ms. Muraskwa Stanekia.
Honourable Madam Speaker of the National Assembly, Honourable Executive Mayor, Honourable President of the Pan-African Parliament, Honourable Speakers and Deputy Speakers of Parliament, distinguished parliamentarians, dear colleagues, it's my pleasure to address you today on behalf of Dr. Tulia Ackson, the President of the Interparliamentary Union, who is unable to be with us due to the forthcoming elections in her country, Tanzania. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Parliament of South Africa for hosting this important summit, bringing together speakers of the parliaments of the G20 member countries and other invited nations. We are all grateful for your warm hospitality and the excellent conditions you have put in place for this meeting. Allow me to highlight the powerful symbolism of our meeting here in South Africa. This country reminds us that after the pain of injustice, it is possible to build reconciliation. After exclusion, it is possible to build equality. Africa is a young, creative continent, full of potential, but is also among the most exposed to climate, health, and economic shocks. As an organization which has long championed gender equality and youth participation, the IPU is particularly pleased that this summit was preceded by a meeting for women parliamentarians, building on the success of the first such meeting in Brazil last year, and the meeting for young parliamentarians, a new initiative introduced by South Africa for this 11th P20 summit. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered at a critical moment in our shared history, a moment when crises are multiplying and intertwining: climate change, persistent conflicts, growing inequalities, technological upheavals. These challenges know no borders or passports, and in the face of them, one thing is certain: no country can act alone. Together, we are stronger. The theme of this summit, harnessing parliamentary diplomacy for the realization of global solidarity, equality, and sustainability, is highly topical and relevant, and it chimes very much with the IPU's values, goals, and strategy. Just last year, our member parliaments adopted the Landmark Geneva Declaration on Parliamentary Diplomacy, building bridges for peace and understanding, in which they reaffirmed their commitment to parliamentary diplomacy as a means to address growing challenges to peace and international security. I believe our discussion today can take this a step further, as we consider the deployment of parliamentary diplomacy not just to prevent and resolve conflict, but to build bridges of solidarity, to support one another and work together in creating a more equal world, and to advance solutions and good practices for truly sustainable development. We face global challenges that require a spirit of collective responsibility. The COVID-19 pandemic has reminded us no one is safe until everyone is safe. Parliaments must translate this solidarity into concrete action through legislation that guarantees equitable access to vaccines, healthcare and education, through budgets that support international cooperation, through platforms that defend peace and reject hatred. Solidarity is not a slogan, it's a moral and political obligation. In too many places, divisions are widening between rich and poor, between men and women, between generations, between and within countries. Parliamentary diplomacy must be a lever for reducing these inequalities. This means promoting gender equality in our laws and institutions, guaranteed equal opportunities for our young people, ensuring that every country, regardless of its economic weight, has a say in global governance, for there can be no lasting peace without social justice. We can no longer delay the thought choices that are needed to save our planet. The climate crisis is already hitting our societies hard, especially the most vulnerable. Parliamentary diplomacy must be a catalyst for climate and environmental action. This means adopting ambitious laws and to accelerate the energy transition, supporting economic models that respect nature, and ensuring that the digital transformation is carried out in an ethical and sustainable manner. Our duty is clear: legislate today to protect future generations. Parliamentarians are increasingly recognizing that their role is not simply about serving their own constituents and countries, but about being key players in global governance. In July this year, speakers of parliament from around the world, many of them is also in this room today, adopted a wide-ranging declaration on parliamentary cooperation and multilateralism for peace, justice and prosperity for all. The declaration recognized that the world is in turmoil and that only parliamentary cooperation and a reinvocated multilateral system can address the multiple overlapping crises we face. Collective action, strong institutions, and new ways of thinking are needed to achieve the goal. We need a stronger and more effective multilateral system with a revitalized United Nations at its core, supported by multilateral engagement across a whole ecosystem of actors: civil society, businesses, academia, faith-based and minority groups, to name but a few. Intergovernmental forums such as G20 also have their place in this exclusive approach. The world's largest economies have a responsibility to drive multilateralism forward, and only they hold the keys to tackling structural issues such as poverty, inequality, and the climate emergency. At the same time, they must always act in solidarity with those outside the group, ensuring that all countries, no matter their size or economic might, have access to the necessary resources to develop and prosper. Parliamentary diplomacy has many unique strengths. It allows the legitimately and democratically elected representatives of the people to engage in frank and direct dialogue with their counterparts around the world. Therefore, putting parliamentary diplomacy at the service of global solidarity, equality and sustainability is the mission we must pursue together. The words and the good intentions are there, particularly among the global parliamentary community. But how do we turn these promises into action? How do we ensure that our resolutions, our declarations are translated into meaningful policy and legislation? And how do we measure whether our efforts have succeeded? This is the other side of parliamentary diplomacy. It is not just a question of finding common ground and formulating collective commitments, but of monitoring their implementation and evaluating the end result. We need to invest more in such efforts to ensure we are accountable to our constituents and to one another. The P20 summit is a case in point. We need to ensure that the government of the G20 hear our voices. And then, each time we meet, we need to assess the progress we ourselves have made. The speakers of the parliaments of the G20 have been meeting for 15 years now and have worked to cement the importance of the P20 as a leading engagement group in the main G20 process. The IPU is pleased to have been a part of this development and stands ready to continue and expand its commitment to supporting the P20 for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice President of the IPU. We really appreciate your words. And honourable delegates, keeping with the theme that we refer to about the Women's Parliamentarian Summit we held over the past 2 days, we are keeping it with women. So it is my honour and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, and it is the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, the Honourable Kubai.
Thank you very much, Programme Directors, Honourable Governor and Honourable Laureate, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honourable Tokoti Diza, NCOP Chairperson, Honourable Refilo Msweni-Tsipane, the PAP President, Honourable Chief Fortune Zakaria Charumbiria, Vice President of IPU, Ms. G. Moravska-Stanekta, Honourable Speakers, Heads of Delegates, on behalf of the President of the Republic of South Africa, I would like to welcome you to South Africa, but also to the G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you and to deliver the speech on behalf of His Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is unable to be with us today. This summit is a call to action for the parliaments of the G20 to work together to advance the principles of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. The P20 is a unique platform for strengthening global collaboration. It is an opportunity for the parliaments of the G20 countries to exchange ideas, to network, and to contribute substantively to resolving the most pressing issues of our time. We meet at a time when our world is beset by problems on a number of fronts. These problems include conflicts and war, climate change, digital disruption, geopolitical instability, pandemics, and other global health crises. These crises intersect, and though they may vary with respect to intensity and lived experiences, but they affect us all as the global world. As the institutional anchor of democracy, parliaments play a number of mutually reinforcing roles. The first is representative and representation. Parliaments are the voices of the people and as such aspire to reflect the diversity of their respective society and constituencies. The data of the Interparliamentary Union indicates notably progress worldwide with respect to the representation of young people, women, persons with disabilities, and minorities across the world. Secondly, parliaments are tasked with creating the enabling legal framework for the progressive realization of equality and for passing laws that align with the international commitment of their respective countries. These commitments, ladies and gentlemen, include the domestication of international treaties, incorporating human rights standards, and advances the sustainable developmental goals. Thirdly, parliaments hold governments accountable to their domestic and international commitments. They ensure that the necessary budgets are allocated to reflect these commitments. Beyond being chambers of debate, beyond advancing rights and overseeing executive powers, parliaments are the critical and crucial bridge between citizen and the state. They are a place where the destinies of nations are chartered. Human dignity is at the center of our aspirations as governments, as parliaments, and as society. The Brasilia Joint Statement on Parliaments for a Just World and a Sustainable Planet set a high standard. It declared a commitment by the G20 parliamentary speakers to deepen solidarity and parliamentary diplomacy to deliver people-centered solutions. This was reinforced by the endorsement of the Charter of Alagoas from the first P20 meeting of women parliamentarians, which committed the signatories to a concrete program of gender mainstreaming and gender budgeting in the world of their respective parliaments. We are greatly encouraged by the reports that have been received here today, both from the women and youth representatives, by the equally and ambitious high level of articulation, if I may say so, that concluded yesterday. We are particularly encouraged that the issues of women representation in the global climate response was a major issue of discussion, but more importantly, the issue of youth unemployment reflected upon this morning worries you as parliamentarians. It is clear that we need to pursue sustainable development in our respective countries first and foremost. We need to improve representation and inclusive participation in that development. For many, global solidarity is far removed from their everyday realities of access to employment, healthcare, education, and to a decent quality of life. We are contending with rising inequalities between and within societies and between the global north and the global south. In many parts of the world, rising populism, xenophobia, and extreme forms of nationalism threaten to undermine solidarity. It is therefore incumbent upon us as parliaments to bring our institutions closer to the people, to restore the bonds of trust, and to make all citizens part of the effort to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm pleased that the G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit has been broadening citizen participation as a standing item as we seek out new and innovative ways to achieve this inclusivity. The summit is a valuable forum for the exchange of best practices between the different G20 parliaments around how we can consolidate faith in democracy and adapt to contemporary realities. 15 years since the first informal consultation began that led to the first G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit, this mechanism endures as a platform for bringing a parliamentary dimension to global governance. For the international commitments of the G20 to be effectively translated into national realities, and for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals to have practical meaning, implementation must be felt on the ground and by our citizens. As the bridge between citizens and state, the challenge for parliaments in the world over is to translate hope into purpose and promise into action. I look forward to our engagements today, but also more importantly, looking even further to a bold, forward-looking declaration from this year's summit as South Africa hosts the conference. One that is matched by tangible steps that will be taken by all the parliaments represented here today to give practical meaning to solidarity, equality, and sustainability. On behalf of His Excellency President Ramaphosa, the people of South Africa and government, we welcome you and hope you enjoy your stay, but most importantly, wish you fruitful deliberation during your summit. I thank you.
Thank you very much, the Honourable Minister of Justice, for inputs and observations of the 2 days that we've had the meetings of the women and the youth, and very, very important observations that has come from the Honourable Minister. Honourable delegates, it now gives me the great pleasure to call upon the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the Honourable Msweni Tsipane, who will pass the vote of thanks.
Co-Program Directors, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honourable Togo Didiza, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Honourable Kubai, Executive Mayor of the Overstand District Municipality, Councillor Glass, His Excellency the President of Pan-African Parliament, Honourable Chief Charumbira, the Vice President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, the speakers and leaders of G20 parliamentarians, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed with great humility and honor that we give a vote of thanks on this historic occasion of the 11th G20 Parliamentary Speakers Summit held on African soil. We wish to extend our thanks to the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Honourable Kubai, for the delivery of the keynote address, which was quite instructive in setting the scene for the important deliberations that shall take place over the next few days. The insight provided in capturing the meaning and essence of this moment shall remain etched in the memory of delegates present in our mission to harness parliamentary diplomacy for global solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Through this address, you reaffirmed the role and significance of parliamentarians in playing their part to fashion a new order as we respond to current global challenges and opportunities. Accordingly, we also wish to extend our words of gratitude for the compelling remarks made by our affiliate bodies, the President of PAP, in his articulation of the perspective of African parliaments to explore opportunities that the G20 provides for Africa's people. The Vice President of the IPU, whose input underlined the important role of the Parliamentary Union in bringing together parliaments from across the globe as means to deepen representative and participatory democracy across all nations. The Executive Speaker of Overstand District Municipality, for your warm words in welcoming all parliamentarians, as well as the support provided to ensure our Parliament hosts a successful Speakers Summit. Equally, I take this opportunity to thank the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honourable Didiza, for her leadership in clearly recentering the significance and impact of this platform in elevating all thematic issues. Program Director, we also want to echo the voice of our youth to capitalize on technology advancement to value add on our natural endowment. We also want to thank our women parliamentarians for emphasizing the importance of global financial reforms for the pursuit of just energy transition, as it has been established that climate change proportionally impacts women more negatively. Our presiding officers, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, as well as the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, for ensuring a befitting opening session that represents the aspiration of all our nations and parliamentarians. To this extent, we wish to thank all speakers and leaders of G20 parliamentarians for traveling far and wide to form part of this momentous occasion. As we anticipate rich dialogue and conversation that shall underpin these spirited debates, the expectation of the people we serve is that the outcome of this summit truly translate our international obligation to realize development goals. We therefore look forward to our joint resolutions, which provides an opportunity to enact more unified voices and perspectives on the pertinent issues and themes before the upcoming G20 summit. These issues, as elaborated in this opening session, engender the state of the global economy, global trade, climate change, agriculture, technology, peace, security, human solidarity, and equality for all. Thus, through the maximum use of this P20, we truly hope all delegates and parliamentarians shall be more attendant to re-energize our determination in the call for deeper elaboration of our continental and global challenges. As I conclude, as we are challenged to influence rather than satisfying the standards set by others, we look forward to the opportunity to evaluate our future prospects from a more thoroughgoing standpoint. We thus thank you all and wish you successful deliberation. Thank you very much, delegates.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. Honourable delegates, just some housekeeping rules right now. I would request that all delegates remain seated, and I will call for the speakers, deputy speakers, heads of delegations, and the chair of the houses to please come forward to do a group photograph before we adjourn for lunch. Give us a few minutes to clear the stage here, and then we will request you to please come forward. Speakers, deputy speakers, heads of delegations, and chairs of the houses. And thank you very much for being a wonderful audience. Honourable delegates that are seated at the back, you may make your way out through the back door there to go for lunch whilst we do the group photographs here.